In this project we're going to create a composite image from this model and place her against this new background here. This always used to be a very difficult task for Photoshop, but in recent years it's become a lot easier. And if we want to make it easier still, then it's important to photograph the subject against a neutral plane backdrop. Okay, one that has good contrast between the subject and the background. In this case we're working with a grey background, so we'll be able to use one of the contrast blend modes to perfect the job at the end of the task. Okay, let's take a look at the first step, which is simply to create one of the selection tools. Here I'm choosing the quick selection tool. I'm going to select the background rather than the subject in this instance. Okay, we'll just roll around to select most of that grey background there. And again I'm going to come out onto the right hand side and select the right hand side of this background. Now what I usually like to do in these instances is just select any of the areas of transition where we can see little bits of the background showing through the hair there. Okay, and just a little bit on that side there. And this one's going to be a little bit tricky, so I might switch tools here. I might come over to the lasso tool, and we're going to hold down the shift key so we can add this to the selection, and then I'm just going to lasso this area of background that I can see shining behind through the hair there. Okay, and that will be adding that to the selection. Now typically what I'd like is I like to create the smoother edge selections using a different tool to either the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool that we've been using here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract this from the selection. Before we do that, however, we have the background selected and not the model. Okay, so we're going to come up to the select menu and choose inverse. Okay, so now only the model is selected and not the background. I'm going to hold down the option key, and this allows me to subtract this edge from that master selection. I'll just ring that round, coming all the way back round to the beginning. Okay, now this is out of the selection, but I'm going to add it back in using the pen tool. Okay, so we're going to select the pen tool there. Okay, press P on the keyboard. I'm going to zoom into this area so I can get a clearer idea of what I'm doing, and I'll just use the space bar to drag that into the center of the canvas area. And one of the options that I like using with the pen tool is the rubber band option, which I've selected in the options bar here. This just makes it a little bit easier for me to see the vector path that I'm drawing around the subject. We've also got path selected rather than the shape option here. I'm just going to select just to the right of this selection here, and then click and drag a short distance. Okay, and the second one I'm going to come down to the other end of this arc and then click and drag until I can just accurately create that arc that we can see there. And now I'm just going to click on the this flat side of this shoulder here, and again clicking and dragging out to create a little bit of a direction handle there. I'm going to come around to the other side of that shape and then click and drag down, and keep on dragging until I can emulate that shape. If you're in doubt where to put this line, try and put it on the inside of the edge, the subject edge, rather than outside into the new background. Okay, now this shoulder's reasonably straight, so I'm just going to click a couple of times, and again coming off the canvas area, just click, and we'll come round, click, and come round, and then select the beginning point there so I can close the path. Okay, now we've got this path and a selection. I want to add this path as a selection to the original selection. So inside of this path I'm just going to right click and choose Make Selection. Now in the Make Selection dialog we've got here, I'm setting a 0.5 pixel radius here. This will just give me a slightly softer edge so that it doesn't look like it's been cut out with a pair of scissors. Okay, and we're going to add this to the existing selection. So I'm going to select the Add to Selection radio button here and then select OK. Okay, let's zoom out, fit on screen. I'll use the keyboard shortcut on a Mac, which is Command 0. That'd be Control 0 on our PC. With the selection completed, we're going to move over to the Layers panel, and at the base of the Layers panel we're going to click on the Add Layer Mask icon in order to mask this. Okay, this will look far from perfect at the moment, but with the mask selected, we're going to come into the Select menu and choose Refine Mask. Okay, now most of the work will be done with the Refine Radius tool here, so we'll leave all of the other settings set to 0 for the time being. Okay, now with the Refine Radius tool, we can move into the image preview area. If you need to change the size of the brush that you're working with, then in the options bar up here, we can modify the size of the brush. Okay, I'm using a 200 pixel radius. You can also modify the size of the brush using the square bracket keys next to the letter P on the keyboard. Now I'm just going to click and move around the area. Now I'm going to be very careful not to move the crosshair in the center of my brush into any areas which should be left 100% opaque. Okay, just moving around, and as I approach the shoulder I'm going to have to go very carefully here so I don't move into that shoulder area. And just letting go and letting that pick up and modify that area of the mask. And now I'm just going to reduce the size of the brush and work on this interior edge here. Just being again careful not to go into the ear too far. Okay, and complete that area of the mask. Okay, increasing the size of the brush again using that square bracket key and coming up over the top of the hair there. Okay, now just trying to pick up as much as I can see. We can modify this later. Okay, so I'll just pick up as most as I can see now and then let go. I'm just going to remove the Refine Mask dialog out of the way and click on the Show Radius option here. This allows me just to see whether I've got all of the hair that I need. And if you've got any areas that should be left 100% opaque, like I've just clipped the shoulder there, I'm just going to come in and reduce the size of the brush, holding down the Option key and try and remove some of that area that should be left 100% opaque, like so. Okay, we can uncheck that Show Radius dialog box now, and the hair is being picked up by the Refine Radius tool, but we're still seeing remnants of the old background there. If I just zoom in, you can see the old lighter grey background behind the strands of hair, and the hair looks just a little bit choppy and chunky there, and we can improve this in a number of ways. Okay, one of the ways we can pick up more detail in the hair is with the Shift Edge slider. We could slide that to the right just to pick up a little bit more of the detail in the hair, but that also brings in a little bit more of the background surrounding the hair, that older background. Okay, and the way to get rid of that older background is simply to click on the Decontaminate Colors option and then slide the amount slider to the right. You'll be looking at a value of somewhere between 75 and 85. If you slide this slider too far, you're going to create some decontamination errors. We're getting much more detail here, but you might pick up some colors that start to are not natural to the hair, polluting areas of the sky. So I'm just going to back that up to around about 85 to keep the background colors clean. We might process this now. As soon as you use the Decontaminate option, it's going to go out to a new layer with Layer Mask, because as you can see we've been working with a smart object here and we can't actually modify the pixels of that smart object. Okay, so we're going to select OK, and that automatically switches off the visibility of this new layer, or sorry, the old layer there. Now that's a pretty good job that we've got from there. We can see quite a lot of fine detail. If we zoom in to 100%, you can see a lot of the fine detail. If you're being really fussy, this can actually be better, and I'm going to show you how we can actually improve detail even further. I'm just going to zoom out to 50% here. We're going to switch on the visibility of this original layer that was switched off. Okay. And if I just click on and off there, you will see a little bit of detail come back in around there. And I'm actually going to switch off the layer mask. Just hold down the Shift key and click on that layer mask to switch it off. That will restore the grey background that we have. Okay, but the magic here now comes with the blend mode we're going to attach to this layer. With the layer mask switched off, we're going to select this layer to make sure it's the active layer. And we can hide this grey background by using one of the contrast blend modes from the contrast group here. Now typically overlay would be the default, okay, and as you can see that's working quite nicely, but sometimes we can get a better result by using the hard light blend mode. Okay, and as you can see, we've got a substantial more detail coming around these fine strands of hair. I'll just switch that on and off so you can see the detail that we're picking up. It's also cleaning up the background nicely. Let's just zoom in and see that extra detail that we're getting from this hard light technique. Okay, so before and after, and we're picking up every single strand of hair now inside of that technique. This technique works when we've got a background that is grey or very nearly grey, and it's an alternative to a previous technique we've been looking at where the background colour is black and we use a screen blend mode. Likewise, if we manage to photograph the subject on a white background, then we can set this layer to the multiply blend mode. So there we have three options for creating very high quality composite files using either black, white or grey backdrops. If we wanted to now fine-tune the color balance between the background and the subject, that would then be a simple matter of selecting the background layer and bringing in a curves, hue saturation or color balance layer, and then we can modify the color of this. I'm just going to come down to my blue channel, and we're going to pull the blue down to make that a little bit warmer. It's going a little bit green now, so we'll go to the red channel and pull the red channel up to add a little bit of warmth to that background. And as we can see now, we're getting a more pleasing match between the new background and the model, which looks as though she's been photographed in really quite warm light there. And so we can see her before and after. That cool background has now been replaced by a nice warm background.